Okay, thank you. And welcome to this side event of the 53rd session of the UN Statistical Commission on the new indicator on the measurement of development support, which is organized by the IAEG-SDGs Working Group on measurement of developmental support. I'm Francesca Perucci, for those who don't know me, Assistant Director at UNSD, and it's my great pleasure to moderate the event today. Well, first, I'd like to congratulate all the members of the working group for their work and contributions during these past 2 years, and most of all, the very able co-chairs of the group, Anne-Lisbeth Bratthaug of Statistics Norway and Camilo Mendes of DANE, the National Statistical Office of Colombia. They've led this effort and dedicated really a lot of time and work to arrive at this very good proposal on the new indicator that is now going to be reviewed in only 2 weeks, just 2 weeks by the UN Statistical Commission. I would also like to recognize the great contributions by our colleagues at OECD, Julia Ben and her team, and UNCTAD, Anu Peltola, and all our colleagues also at the DESA Office for Sustainable Development, in particular, for financing for sustainable development, in particular, Resina Catafono. All of them have really provided fantastic substantive support throughout this period. The working group was established by the IAEG-SDG indicators, the working group that deals with the development of the indicator framework for SDGs in 2020. Following and implementing a decision by the UN Statistical Commission with the task of preparing a proposal for a new indicator under target 17.3, mobilize additional financial resources for developing countries from multiple sources. The task had to be completed in time for submission to the Statistical Commission in 2022, and here we are. The proposal is ready to be reviewed. The proposal the Statistical Commission will have before them for adoption is really a great achievement, I would say, of the working group, and is the result of intense consultations among all members of the group and beyond. The members represent countries from all regions of the world with a good balance between North and South, and also each country is represented by both the National Statistical Agency and the government agency that deals with development assistance measures in each country. As with other SDG global indicators, when you look at this from a single country perspective, of course, there might be aspects that are not fully aligned with the country practices. However, we have to keep in mind that this is an indicator meant for global reporting, and as such, needs to take into account all the very diverse views and perspectives of all different country groups. It is the best approach that could be taken to accommodate all those views. So the group really needs to be congratulated for this. And we are confident that thanks to the great efforts, there will be strong support from the Statistical Commission on this proposal, and really look forward to the reporting process starting soon, thanks to the commitment and engagement of our colleagues from OECD and UNCTAD. So I'd like now to turn to our co-chairs for their presentations on the background of the work and the process that was followed. And I believe Anne-Lisbeth Bratthaug of Statistics Norway will go first, and Camilo Mendes of Colombia will follow, but over to you for your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, just to say hello, I'm Anne-Lisbeth Bratthaug from Statistics Norway. Camilo, he will go first now, and I will come back when we go to the presentation of the proposal. So first, Camilo, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesca and Lisbeth, for that introduction. I'm very happy to see a lot of familiar names connecting to this side event. And it's weird because we had a lot of engagement every month. So I got used to seeing all of you. So very much for taking some time of your busy agendas and joining to this side event in which we intend to present some of the background and the proposal itself that has been developed. And just to echo Francesca's words, that it's a compromise that has been a lot of effort put on during the last 2 years among members and the United Nations Statistical Division, the OECD and UNCTAD. So thank you very much again for joining in. So I hope that you're seeing my slides. So in this first part, we will cover a little bit of the background and process that has led to the creation of this proposal. And just to share some specific facts with you, we were established in May 2020, and through this whole time, we've held 14 meetings every month in which we discussed several components of the indicator, which it's aligned with our objective of further developing and refining the measurement of development support that is in line with the 2030 agenda and the target 17.3, which is mobilize additional financial resources for developing countries from multiple sources. And as mandated by our terms of reference, we've had a great engagement with our colleagues at the Interagency and Expert Group on SDG indicators and have continuously reported to them our progress, our doubts, and shared this in an open fashion. Most recently, back in November 2021, we had the opportunity to share the finalized indicator proposal for the review of the IAEG, and this process was accepted by full consensus. So just to go a little bit on the membership, just to echo again some of the messages that Francesca sent, the Commission strived to gain a regional representation, which you can be able to see in here, in which we had people participating from national statistical offices, but also from the agencies that are in charge of development cooperation in each one of those countries, in order to ensure that policy priorities from the cooperation side are aligned with statistical frameworks. And just to point out three particular elements here in this slide, it's important that as per the discussions that we held within the working group, we really strive to provide a conceptual framework for South-South cooperation, which continues to evolve and continues to see its relevance to the implementation of the 2030 agenda heightened. So we created a subgroup in which you can see that most countries from the global South discussed this effort and under the chairmanship of our colleagues from India and the secretarial support provided by UNCTAD. Moreover, during the process, we had the great benefit of bringing in very important observers to the discussion, really big players in this development cooperation landscape at Brazil, Netherlands, the Republic of Korea, and Germany. And also I wanted to underscore the huge role that has been played by the OECD during the process, as much of the work that they had advanced within the discussions of the Total Official Support for Sustainable Development Task Force really set out a clear pathway to structure the discussions to be held in this working group. So while this slide does not cover the full timeline of the proceedings of the working group, I just wanted to really focus in here because this really was the final stage of all of our discussion, in which there are three particular elements that are very relevant. The first one, it's that the group decided to carry out an open consultation of the proposal that was being held. This consultation was held between the 16th of July and the 27th of August, and we managed to receive 121 responses, which we will see a little bit further down the way, and also to highlight that while the working group was meeting as a whole, the subgroup was also having their own discussions on how can we provide a measurement framework for South-South cooperation. On the 7th of September, they held their seventh meeting. And afterwards, with the inputs provided both by the open consultation and the discussions of the working of the subgroup on South-South cooperation, we managed to finalize our proposal. Just to give you a short overview of the results of the open consultation, there was a general support from the proposal, and we were very excited because we really had like global coverage in this consultation, and we saw a great engagement, not only from national statistical offices, which might be what we are used to within the Statistical Commission, but we also try to engage with other public entities and other stakeholders, which are key to have in this discussion, such as the academia, the private sector, in order to to gather their inputs on the proposal that was being put forward at that stage. And just to go quickly a little bit in one of the milestones that has been reached by this working group is to focus quickly on the South-South cooperation framework. As I said, this process was led by India as the chair, but also benefited from the great progress that was already made by countries such as Brazil and Mexico, which really gave their best to try and get comments and inputs from other countries, because as it is stated in the Buenos Aires outcome document, BAPA plus 40, it is very important to take into account that South-South cooperation is always evolving and has different types of mechanisms that it can be carried out. So this work plan was executed and also benefited from the cooperation and the progress that was made already by the TOSSD task force to nurture this proposal. As a main result, we have the UNSD has asked UNCTAD to act provisionally as a co-custodian of this new indicator developed under target 17.3, and we have created 3 distinctive categories to classify these modalities of South-South cooperation, which are the financial South-South cooperation modalities, the non-financial cooperation modalities, which are suitable for monetization, and finally the non-financial South-South cooperation modalities, which are quantified through non-monetized methodologies. And while some challenges remain within this framework, already having a frame to discuss about its great outcome of the discussions, it's also important to note that the G77 plus China has been briefed on this issue on the 17th of September, and they have shared with us an overall support of the proposal. Now what awaits us, it's truly to see how the pilot studies that will be carried out through UNCTAD's coordination will come out in order to strengthen and really manage to get different views from countries that engage in South-South cooperation modalities. And just wanted to quickly mention that in order to really enable a greater transparency and consultation by different stakeholders ahead of the 53rd Statistical Commission, as a group, we have set up a web page that the link will be posted as soon as I finish in the chat. In there, you will find the materials that were submitted to the 12th IAEG meeting back in November, which include the indicator proposal, its metadata, the draft indicator proposal for SDG target 17.3, reporting, as well as the outcome note of the group on South-South cooperation, and a response to a pilot study direct request that was asked to our colleagues at the OECD. Also in this webpage, you will find the terms of reference that have mandated our group to advance in this proposal, as well as the material that was created and discussed for each one of the monthly meetings that we held during this document. We truly hope that this really enlightens the assessment process that each one of you will carry out. And just to point out for next steps, under the item 3.A of the Statistical Commission that will be held between the 28th of February and the 4th of March, this proposal will be discussed, and you will find in the Statistical Commission webpage the report that was submitted by the Interagency and Expert Group on SDGs, as well as a background document on the work that was carried out by this working group. So I'll stop here to give my colleagues from the OECD and UNCTAD the space to share some of their initial remarks on the process before we go through the proposal. So thank you very much.
So I guess it's over to me now. Is that correct?
Please, Julia, over to you.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So, dear colleagues, on behalf of the OECD, I would like to start by acknowledging really all the efforts that were put to developing this indicator proposal. I will take 2 minutes of your time, but I would really like to thank the co-chairs of the working group, Camilo and Lisbeth, for their dedication, their perseverance, and their stewardship in facilitating a consensus in the working group. Also, many thanks to all members and observers of the working group for their active participation and flexibility to find solutions on delicate and technical issues. Also, many thanks to UNSD Secretariat, Francesca, your team, for the support you have provided to the group, and certainly our colleagues in UNCTAD for their great collaboration. Steve, it's great to see you at this side event. Anu has taken over from you. This has been very helpful throughout the process. You have shared expertise and very importantly supported the subgroup on South-South cooperation in its work. In that regard, I'd like to commend the chair of the subgroup from India for the final proposal that was developed on the conceptual framework of South-South cooperation, and also Brazil and Mexico for their critical role in spearheading the development of this conceptual framework that will certainly reinforce and provide visibility to South-South cooperation going forward. Now, as Camilo and Francesca already stated, I mean, the process to develop this indicator, it has been quite a few months. We worked intensively to discuss and refine the measurement of development support in line with the 2030 agenda. And we were really happy on the OECD side to be able to contribute all the previous work that had been done in the context of developing the new measurement framework of total official support for sustainable development. The proposal required a lot of time and effort from many countries and organizations, and a lot of flexibility to reach consensus. The OECD is very pleased to be together with UNCTAD, co-custodian of this indicator. So on our side, activity level data will be collected now on an annual basis through the TOSSD framework from close to 100 provider countries and organizations. And they will be processed and verified to ensure the maximum quality for the data users. This process of data collection, it draws on the sound methodology that were developed by the International TOSSD Task Force, and just signaling that that task force is also comprised of both statistical, or is still comprised of both statistical and development policy experts since 2017. Finally, so to make this indicator a great success, so we would really like to encourage all countries and organizations to report to TOSSD, and my team stands ready to support you in this endeavor, if necessary, through training or capacity building activities. We are determined to do our very best to make TOSSD more and more comprehensive to properly inform this indicator going forward. We will work closely with UNCTAD to leverage our expertise and synergies. We will ensure that there are no overlaps in global reporting for this indicator, and we will work to make the reporting as efficient as possible. So final word, thank you very much for your inviting us to this side event. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia. And it's now, allow me to turn to our colleagues from UNCTAD. Anu Peltola, over to you.
Thank you very much. And dear colleagues, welcome to this side event, also on UNCTAD's behalf. I really also need to join colleagues in thanking everyone for the work done, the co-chairs of the working group, Anne, Lisbeth and Camilo, for your excellent leadership. You made this happen. And thanks to the members and observers for the intensive and dedicated work. UNSD Secretariat, we relied on you fully. My special thanks will go, of course, to the chair of the subgroup on measuring South-South cooperation, Sukhbir Singh of India, and to the members, particularly Brazil and Mexico and China, as well as Colombia, Cuba, Egypt, Ghana, South Africa, and Tanzania. I would also like to thank the observers to the subgroup, the Russian Federation, and the OECD, who contributed by sharing their experience in measuring development support with us. UNCTAD is honored to have been called by developing countries to provide the Secretariat for the subgroup and thus contribute to the advancement of this important and challenging work. The work on the measurement of South-South cooperation in particular responds to the call to action of high-level UN conferences on South-South cooperation that have been held in Nairobi and Buenos Aires, as mentioned by Camilo. These conferences encourage development of country-led systems to assess South-South cooperation, improve national data collection, and cooperate in methodology development internationally. And they underline the need to reinvigorate the UN development system support to South-South cooperation, including the selection of indicators and methodologies for its measurement, taking into account the 2030 Agenda and the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. I think we have done notable progress in this regard now. As you know, the country and regional variations in technical approaches to South-South cooperation, as well as the political dimensions, they've made it difficult and challenging to reach unified consensus on the measurement of South-South cooperation before. I'm now happy to say that for the first time, we have a framework to measure South-South cooperation, which was developed in a process led by developing countries and agreed for pilot testing and further technical refinement in countries to ensure that it's feasible, valid, and applicable to different national setups. So this is what we will be pursuing next. Now we have a historic opportunity here to bring developing countries' voice to the global discussions on development support. UNCTAD is ready to act as a co-custodian of the new indicator with the OECD, and we are committed to supporting developing countries in their efforts to measure South-South cooperation and report on the new SDG indicator. At the briefing to the G77 and China, countries underlined the importance of measuring South-South cooperation and the new SDG indicator, as these will play a central role in supporting inclusive development, recovery from the pandemic, and progress perhaps towards all of the goals of the 2030 Agenda. So this is a particularly important SDG indicator, I must say. We look forward to further work with the UNSD, OECD, the member states, and joint work with UN regional commissions to support countries' efforts in all regions. We'll discuss next steps in a presentation by UNCTAD and the OECD shortly after the indicator has been introduced to you. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the discussions.
Thank you so much, Anu. And before I turn again to our co-chairs for the presentation of the actual proposal, I just would like to remind you that there will be time to answer your questions. So I would encourage you to post any comments or questions you have on the chat. And now back to our co-chairs to present the proposal. Over to you, Anne-Lisbeth and Camilla.
Thank you for the opportunity to present the proposal. And Camilo, can I ask you to share the screen with us? And while he is doing so...
Give me 2 seconds, please.
While he is doing so, well, I also want to join in and echo all the thanks that are given to the members of the working group and the international organizations, and also to countries that gave feedbacks in the global consultation we had, and not least also to the Secretariat, which well, they have made life for me and Camillo rather easy. So thanks to you. So next, yes, thank you, Camillo. So my pleasure is then to give you or to present the proposal for you. And the full name of this indicator is additional financial resources mobilized for developing countries from multiple sources. It's a rather long name, but it is important. All the words in it is important. The indicator, there is one indicator, but and it is on gross receipts by developing countries, but it consists of official sustainable development grants, official concessional sustainable development loans, official non-concessional sustainable development loans, foreign direct investments, mobilized private finance, which we have said in the proposal is still on an experimental basis, subject to review in the 2025 review of the SDGs indicators. And the reason for this is that we see that there is possible overlap between the mobilized private finance and the FDI. And that's also why we have had it on memorandum as a memorandum item. And important for this indicator is that this sub-indicator or part of the indicator excludes private finance raised in the developing countries themselves. The proposal says that OECD and UNCTAD should be co-custodians, which we have already heard they are willing to. And the goal and target addressed is the target 17.3, mobilize additional financial resources for developing countries from multiple resources. Next slide, please. We say there are 10 key features of the proposal. It includes criteria to identify flows that can be considered as supporting sustainable development. It fully complies with the Addis Ababa Action Agenda and promotes transparency by dividing the flows into the 6 sub-indicators. Each of these sub-indicators record a unique financing flow and they have a distinct nature and concessionality. So it's important not to add them up in our view. It addresses the SDG target 17.3, as already said. All data represent new financing flows to developing countries, covering the, should I say, traditional flows like grants, loans, and FDI, and flows that represent additional or new types of financing, like mobilized private finance and private grants. It follows the recipient perspective, and that's also important. So it's only for recipient countries. This we show it only for recipient countries. We had within the working group unanimous consensus over this South-South cooperation conceptual framework, which already is said both by Camillo and Anu. And this proposed or this conceptual framework has also received support from the G77 and China. The proposal is built upon previous work from the OECD and UNCTAD, and as well as the total official support for sustainable development task force, the TOSD task force, as we say. Next, please. Further on, the proposal, well, we say it promotes transparency. But it's not only the indicator that promotes transparency. The process in itself has been open and transparent, as Camillo already has said. And we reported consistently to the IAEG SDGs open meetings, and open consultation included a wide participation from multiple stakeholders. Through the technical discussions held in the working group, exclusions of the proposal were made, considering the availability of information, the results of pilot studies, and the sustainable development criteria agreed upon by the working group. Moreover, it should also be acknowledged the role played by members of the working group that are also members of the TOSTI task force. Exclusions was well considered within the set of these exclusions. Activities and peace and security.
Lisbeth, we are losing the connection. Perhaps if you switch off the video, you have more bandwidth. Turn off the video. Camillo, should I turn over to you to take over if Lisbeth cannot resume the connection?
Yes. So I think we left then in the exclusions. So we held very intensive discussions of different flows, which were not finally included within the proposal. So these exclusions concern the debt relief, the internal refugee costs, and the administrative costs not allocated to specific development activities, as well as peace and security expenditures other than those reportable as official development assistance. One of the, and also it's important to mention that when we made the introductory remarks, this is what we were meaning when we were talking about the compromise. Throughout our discussions, we managed to identify how for some countries it was very important to take into account these types of items within the flows, but also each one of these faced also very strong position from some countries of the global south. And also this message also relates to the second part of the set of the exclusions, which are the flows that are not covered. And in here we have the private non-concessional loans, portfolio investment, the export credits, whether officially supported or private, as well as the short-term flows with any original maturity of 1 year or less. I feel like there's someone with its mic open. And finally, any other flows that are not within the scope of the proposed stop indicators. And one of the main items associated with this. Sorry, Joshua, I see that Mr. Oduk has his mic open. Okay. So one of the items to take into account in this process, it's also to know that development cooperation, it's always evolving, and it's very hard to try and get all this new financial landscape without having into account a very wide knowledge of its dynamics and how to account for them. And so that's those are the exclusions that we've had. We know it's a compromise for members, but we hope that still in the proposal, it's a very solid approach to the flows that are included as well as excluded from this proposal. So one of the items regarding the methodological considerations of this process truly are related that, sorry, I'm having some trouble with the slides. So this, as I said before, this proposal was shared through an open consultation that we truly have an open and broad support from different stakeholders. And this, with these inputs, we managed to discuss all these considerations and addressed most of them at our meeting, at our 14th meeting on the 14th, 15th, and 20th of December. Also, it's all very important to acknowledge, and as it has been done so far, that we didn't take out this proposal out of our sleeves, as we sought to build from work that was already being done by OECD and UNCTAD, and particularly the data that they have collected, specifically by the TOSSD task force. Especially one of the key criteria that was included, it's to really have a set of sustainable development criteria, which builds on the work that has been put forward by the TOSSD task force. I see that we have managed to get Lisbeth back. So we are now covering the final methodological considerations to be taken into account by members of the Statistical Commission and participants in case they would like to have some further information. So in this bit, I turn back to you. We are finally on the conceptual framework. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Camilo, and apologies, my apologies for, well, whatever happened. I don't know, sometimes this is with digital meetings. You have already said what is about the methodological considerations. You've already gone through this slide. Perhaps you did not mention, well, you mentioned earlier in your presentation, should I say, milestone we have reached by establishing this conceptual framework on the South-South cooperation, which is allowing countries that practice this kind of cooperation to report. And this is extremely important. The proposal reflects the broad agreement among the members of the working group on all main aspects. Nevertheless, it is a compromise, with some countries less comfortable than others with part of the proposal. A particular concern is related to the exclusions, but these exclusions are very extensively discussed. And the exclusions do not imply a judgment on the importance of the flows, but rather reflects the consideration whether they should be included in the indicator or not. For example, debt relief is very important, but it does not represent additional financial flows, financial resources in the framework of the target 17.3. And its accounting with the sub-indicators would drastically affect the meaning, or perhaps also reduce the relevance as measured as measures of net flows of financial resources, including in-donor refugees costs or general administrative costs would mean accounting domestic expenditures in source countries rather than what is reached will reach developing countries. So therefore they are excluded. And expanding peace and security expenditures beyond those allowed as official development assistance would open the coverage to flows that do not necessarily promote economic development and welfare of developing countries as the main objective. So, for instance, international police liaison, drug interdiction, repression of organized crime, etc. Next, please. Data availability and the pilot studies. The proposal is based on existing and planned data collection by OECD and UNCTAD. For OECD, the data, this includes data collected through the TOSD reporting, as also Julia mentioned. But it also reflects traditional OECD DAC CRS reporting. For UNCTAD, this includes existing data on foreign direct investments, which is one of the sub-indicators, and which are compiled by recipient countries themselves and reported to UNCTAD. So the pilot studies regarding all sub-indicators were globally reporting and is shared by OECD and UNCTAD. In the pilot study, the OECD was able to provide as requested and as applicable data to sub-indicators for 140 developing countries and territories in all regions. And multiple countries practicing South-South cooperation, they have agreed to conduct pilot studies while UNCTAD is committed to supporting others in their reporting. So this is to come. And finally, there is, next please. This is the final slide. And this shows the result of the OECD pilot study. It does not cover any data from UNCTAD, like the foreign direct investments, and it does not include any data from South-South providers, but it shows the feasibility of reporting the data based on the TOSD and the OECD DAC reporting. So with this, I thank you for allowing me to present, and back to you, Francesca.
Thank you so much, Anne-Lisbeth and Camillo. Before I turn to the presentation by UNCTAD and OECD on the next steps, just see that there is a question on the chat, but perhaps the question could be, it's related to the data sources and the possible discrepancy between the reporting, whether from the international side or the country side. But perhaps we can take that later after the presentation by our partners, because the presentation will be exactly about that, the principles for the reporting, the data sources, and the coordination between the two international agencies who will be co-custodian of the indicator once it's approved by the Commission. So if there are no other questions at this point, I would like to move to the next agenda item, and if you can be patient, your question will be answered after the presentation by our colleagues. So over to Julia and her team and Anu for the presentation. It's a joint presentation on the reporting process. Yes. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think I will start, right, Julia? Yeah, excellent. So just to share the presentation. Yes. So I hope you can see the presentation.
If you could go on, yeah, perfect, the show mode. Yeah, wonderful, perfect. We can see it. Thank you.
Very good. So this is a joint presentation really focusing on what will be done next so that we can move ahead in global reporting of data on the new SDG indicator. So first of all, we are hoping that the data reporting will be started already this year based on existing data as mentioned by Anne-Lisbeth, the OECD data on TOSD and the FDI data on UNCTAD's side will provide the basis for getting started. Data on South-South cooperation will be added to the global reporting as these data become available from countries. So I will share a few ideas we have about the capacity development support that we will offer from UNCTAD's side to developing countries. The capacity development program will share tools and resources and provide training so that those countries that would like to move ahead can start. New regional aggregates will become available as country coverage improves, so this we will gradually address jointly. The aims of our collaboration as custodians of this SDG indicator are very much in line with what has been recommended and what are the guidelines from the IAEG-SDGs. We will coordinate the country data collection to ensure harmonization and avoid any duplication of effort or data. And we are establishing mechanisms for data validation to support concerns of the recipient countries, ensure that we are coordinated in this data collection effort. We will compare country data reported to both agencies to remove duplicates before calculating aggregates. We will release validated country data in respective OECD and UNCTAD databases to ensure reporting of consistent data also to the global SDG database. We will definitely carefully, closely review the data reported by countries before we report to the global data set. Our intention is also to analyze trends in thematic publications, including joint publications by OECD and UNCTAD. Next steps on UNCTAD side will be to start building a mechanism for the reporting of data on South-South cooperation. We will also be setting up a capacity development program in collaboration with UN regional commissions that are interested, the UN Statistics Division, the OECD, and with the support of pioneering countries. There will be 3 phases in this capacity development program. First is to raise awareness in regional events together with the UN regional commissions and develop a refined framework, tools and resources for data collection, compilation and reporting in early pilots. This will be done based on the findings of pioneering countries and beneficiary countries of the project when we will jointly develop tools and test the framework in practice. The second phase will be to apply the resources in interested developing countries, including in international, interregional workshops, e-learning courses, study tours, and we will have a sharing of expertise between pioneering countries that have already measured South-South cooperation and those that are interested to get started, so to build the capacity. Thirdly, the intention is to share the tools, the early findings and the resources, the technically refined framework with national and global stakeholders internationally, and then support a wider group of developing countries to get started with the measurement of the indicator. Some countries have already expressed their interest to support this work with their expertise, including Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, China, and potentially also India has expressed their initial interest in supporting any other countries who wish to move ahead. We are now preparing the project, making project plans together with the entities mentioned here, and we will start the first activities with the pioneering countries to see what kind of resources will be needed during the project phase. And then regional work is expected to start from next year, but any country interested to get started to review and apply and test the measurement framework on South-South cooperation is most welcome to contact UNCTAD at any time, and we'll be there to provide support. An advisory group will be set up to steer the capacity building efforts that will be consisting of the entities that are involved in the project, the regional commissions, UNSD, OECD, for coordination of these activities so that we can find where the synergies are and work together. This is naturally an area that will require UNCTAD to enter new statistical work, and we hope that we also get the support of countries in our role. We are fully committed to moving ahead efficiently, and hopefully we'll be able to identify the resources and the partnerships that are needed for successful work on this indicator. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So over to me, and Anu, maybe you can click on the slide when I ask you to click. I mean, we have just 2 slides, so this is going to be very brief. So on our side at the OECD, so we will be in a position to actually start producing data for the new indicators, so the sub-indicators that we are responsible for already pretty soon. So the main data source for the sub-indicators will be the TOSSD database, as already presented earlier in the scientific event by the co-chairs. So it's the TOSSD database that has the recipient perspective, where flows are first and foremost measured on a gross disbursement basis. And very importantly, the sustainable development is an eligibility criterion for activities to be included. When it comes to the private grants sub-indicator, so there we will be using other OECD data collections, in particular the data that will be collected or that are being collected from philanthropic foundations. Maybe just to inform you that the TOSSD data collection for 2020 is now being finalized and will be available for consultation actually later this week. Then what we will do is an official release of the TOSSD data for 2020, and that will be in March. Second point here is about the pilot studies. So we will continue undertaking pilot studies on TOSSD. I mean, they have been a very useful tool actually to develop the TOSSD framework so far, and we see them a role also going forward, and to address, for example, issues of data quality, how the data that are being collected can be best utilized by developing countries. I think in the chat there was a question about quality issues, in the sense that what happens if there are discrepancies between the data that are being provided by the provider countries vis-a-vis what is seen at the country level in developing countries. So I mean, on the slide you see there's a reference to comparisons of TOSSD data with countries' domestic systems. This is one way of looking into validating the data that are being collected under this indicator. And we will certainly continue doing this type of pilot work in 2022 and 2023. Also, on the OECD side, we are holding capacity building seminars for reporters, actually for both reporters and users of data. These can be individual for countries, they can be collective. Actually, just this week, we are holding seminars that have been organized jointly with the Islamic Development Bank, with all their member states. And yes, TOSSD task force will continue its work and to ensure these linkages between the work of UNCTAD, specifically on the South-South cooperation measurement. We will be inviting UNCTAD to all future meetings for coordination purposes. And one of the specific questions that we are discussing actually at this point in time is the interoperability of the TOSSD reporting form and the conceptual framework of South-South cooperation. So there, certainly we will have ongoing discussions in the on these topics. Then maybe just this last slide, which is about concluding remarks. So I'm happy to make them. You can put it on the screen, please. Yes, to close by stating at these new indicators 70.3.1 is in our view, I think in UNCTAD's view, everybody's view, this is a major achievement of the IAEG-SDGs Working Group. First internationally agreed conceptual framework for measuring South-South cooperation. And for us, TOSSD task force, very importantly, it acknowledges TOSSD as a source for data and support for sustainable development. That is something that we really appreciate greatly. And then final point, so upon approval by the STATCOM, hopefully first week of March, so then we will indeed start submitting the required data for this indicator on an annual basis, and on our side for the sub-indicators that OECD is responsible for, we think we can start doing it in March 2022. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Julia and Anu, for the presentation. And I understand your question was clarified for the participant who was asking about the data sources. There is another question, though. There are two questions, actually. One on the use of non-traditional data sources, for instance, to measure remittances, and also to what degree and how are discrepancies reviewed. And another question on what efforts are underway to ensure that the SDGs relevant to VOPEs understand this. Any new means of measuring indicators are underway for capacity development. I don't know who would want to take a turn to answer the questions. Perhaps I go back to the co-chairs first, and then UNCTAD and OECD. Lisbeth and Camillo, would you like to address any of the points raised in the chat?
You raised the point about remittances, and remittances is not covered by this indicator. Just to underline that, but remittances is, however, included in another SDG indicator, but not this 17.3.1. So just to say that. And when it comes to discrepancies between data sources, I think Anu and Julia also said this is something which will be reviewed. So I don't think I should add any more to that.
Thank you. There was a question, a second question from the same participant. If you want to address that or pass it over to Camillo.
Perhaps Camillo, I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but perhaps Camillo.
Yeah, sure. I believe that the question is very accurate, as this is something that even us in Colombia have faced as we engage both in South-South cooperation as providers and also our recipients of traditional official development assistance. So currently we are engaging with our fellow colleagues here present, Guillaume, Julia, in working to find out these discrepancies. And this is very much one of the main things that we like of this proposal, and it's that it contributes to the ownership of the flows that are accounted for a specific country. So yes, this is something that we took into account into our deliberations, and for the data that is submitted to the OECD, special seminars, as Julia was presenting, are made in order to familiarize the people which are in charge of reporting in each one of the countries. So we are well aware that this might be difficult at first to maybe assess from the part of countries, but also through the support of UNCTAD and OECD, we are sure that countries will manage to gain this technical expertise, enabling them to accurately report to this new indicator when it is approved.
Thank you, Camilo. And Julia, Anu, anything you would like to add at this point? I think you clarified already a lot on your presentation, but if there is anything that you wish to add.
Yes, there's this other question about what efforts are underway to ensure that SDGs relevant VOPEs understand these any new means of measuring indicators are underway. So I must confess I don't know what VOPE means in this context.
I was trying to imagine what those what the acronym would stand for, but I can't. My imagination has a limit. Perhaps Florence, if you could put on in the chat what you meant. Meanwhile, maybe anybody wants to comment on new data sources, although I don't think there are new data sources that are easily applied. And of course, remittances, the specific example, would not apply to this particular case not being included in the indicator. But any other comment while we figure out voluntary organization for evaluation professionals, evaluators. Oh, okay, that relates to evaluation, the evaluators. Yeah, over to you, Julia.
Yes, so maybe I can mention in this context that since TOSSD is a new measurement framework, we will be doing quite a lot of outreach to let the world know that the new measure now exists. We will also be explaining how the TOSSD framework relates to the UN indicator 17.3 to make sure that there are no confusion arising from the slightly different coverage and so on. So I don't know whether I can directly respond to the question from Florence, but certainly we will be undertaking that type of outreach activities and events which will help to explain that there is now new data that can be used also for analytical purposes, including by evaluation professionals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia. If there are no other comments from our speakers, and I don't see any other questions, perhaps I would like to go back to the co-chairs for their final remarks as we close this side event today. Anne-Lisbeth and Camilo.
Thank you, Francesca. Well, I just say I think this is a big step forward, having managed to get a compromise on this indicator. So I think this will be, I think this and the transparency which is within this indicator makes it easy to, well, easy, perhaps is not the correct word, but it at least it will be, you can understand what is included in the indicator. And I think this is a big achievement. And also perhaps the largest achievement in the whole thing is that we have managed to get on board South-South cooperation. So I'm very positive for the future with the co-custodians who really take ownership of this indicator forward. So I don't think I have more to say. That is, but perhaps Camilo, you would have some more to add.
Thank you very much, Anne-Lisbeth and Francesca. Just to share my excitement for this proposal that's been put forward. I believe that Florence comments truly sheds a little bit of light of what engagement can be had from different stakeholders with the use of the indicator that we have proposed right now as it will provide different members of the academia, civil society, and others with a great tool to evaluate and advocate for effective development cooperation, and also empower different governments to very well assess their planning and programming, both from the recipient side as well as the donor side. And also just on South-South cooperation, just wanted to reiterate once again that this truly it's a milestone, and we hope that through the collaboration with our colleagues at UNCTAD and participating countries, we will manage to gain to maintain the support that has been given so far. And just a final word of kindness again to the institutions that have collaborated in the technical support with the OECD. I know that there are many people that have been involved in this, and Julia and Guillaume, you have taken the leadership to participate in these proceedings and always putting hard questions for members and the coaches during the meetings, and this is very much appreciated. Also to UNCTAD, Steve McFeely, who left us unfortunately, and Anu that has come in to finalize this stage, and also to Francesca, Matthias, and everyone that's been working very hard on this indicator. So thank you very much. That would be everything from my side.
Thank you so much. And to conclude from our side, the UN Statistics Division, allow me to thank again all the presenters today, Julia, Nu, and Julia's team, of course, and Gilliard and all the other colleagues, and of course our dear co-chairs. We will miss you. We've worked with you very intensively for a long period of time. And also I would like to speak on behalf of Matthias Reiser from our division, who has really spent an enormous amount of time, and I would like to congratulate him for the great work in servicing this process, and of course all our participants here today for their interest and their continuous engagement on this very important topic. We know this is a difficult indicator, and so even more so, big congratulations to the group for this achievement. We now look forward to the session, the formal session of the Commission in less than 2 weeks. And we hope for a positive outcome, and of course look forward from our side to continue servicing this process in close collaboration with OECD and UNCTAD colleagues to see those numbers on our database and see those numbers on our yearly SDG report. Thanks again, everybody, and you have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.